Hello everybody, and welcome as I adjust the headset here a little bit. And welcome to this live review, if you will, on both the A&E and Dark Side of the Ring episodes, biographies, documentaries, if you will, documentaries on the Ultimate Warrior Jim Hellwig. And I think I'm going to say it best right now, guys. I think when you look at both of the when you look at both uh, documentaries, if you will, biographies, takes on the warrior, you could see that there are indeed similarities. Oops, didn't want to do that. On, discard that. Well, like I said, you kind of tell that there are indeed similarities between the two, if you know what I mean. There are definitely similarities right off the bat. There are similarities in several areas. I mean, they talk about where he was raised and everything and stuff. The only big difference, I think, is the length between both, because on one hand, with Dark Side of the Ring, of course, it's only an hour, depending on whether or not it's a season premiere or a season finale. Then that's the only time you get a 2 hour run, if you know what I mean. And and that's probably the biggest difference between the two, because the A&E biography was 2 hours, and again, they touched upon similar topics, if you will. The only difference, and I was looking at what Alex Hicks had to say, just Alex had to say about this, and he basically felt when he was, because anybody that was anybody that was looking forward to this week, knowing that both A&E biography in collaboration with WWE and Dark Side of the Ring, which is their own independent deal, was going to be talking about the Warrior. A lot of people wanted to watch both shows to see if there was, like I said, any differences, similarities, topics, issues, and things that were touched upon um, in each episode. Whether A&E biography touched upon this, and Dark Side touched upon that. What A&E left out, what Dark Side left out. Stuff. All that kind of stuff. All that kind of stuff, and you know a lot of people, again, getting ready to talk about this. um they wanted to know, they wanted to basically, like I said, see who, again, I know I'm sounding repetitive here because I'm also typing in something here. I'm trying to link it here on Twitter. you know People wanted to know, they wanted to know, what was left in, what was left out, kind of deal. And I'm going to say it right now. um there were differences, especially with who they talked to and like the footage they got and everything, but there were some similarities. Um, the one thing about Dark Side of the Ring, though, as we all know that follow it, is they like to do reenactments. They like to do reenactments of stuff, to kind of give you an idea of what it may have looked like. And that's what they did, here as well, because there were moments where they would reenact, Warrior pinning Hogan, and then they would reenact when Warrior went through the curtain, towards the end of SummerSlam '91, and Vince McMahon fired him. You know, they did a reenactment of him being in the locker room, just breaking down and wondering, what's next after he won the championship. They did reenactments then, and to the credit of AE and AE biography, they touched upon that too. They touched upon all of that, with the exception of the reenactments, if you will, with the exception of the reenactments. And again, they went over basically some of the same stuff, if you will. They even talked about the letter that he had given Vince before he went out for the match, or were potentially going out for the match. You know, they touched upon that and everything, and like I said, they touched upon that, and I don't know if it's that. Like I said, they touched upon the letter, if you will. Like I said, they touched upon the letter and everything, and what was, what it entailed. I mean, here's what's funny. Here's what's funny. Jim Cornette had a copy of the letter that Vince had given Warrior, and A&E had, and I think Warrior's first wife Sherry had a copy of it as well. So had a copy of the letter Warrior was going to give Vince. So Dark Side of the Ring had, that had access to those letters, the actual letters, or at least copies of them. And Abe's biography had access to the letters as well, but they didn't have somebody like Warrior's first wife Sherry holding it, or Jim Cornette holding the one Vince gave Warrior. Instead, they had a copy, like the downloaded digital copy of it, where they highlighted certain parts of each letter from both Vince and Warrior himself. So it was in. I'll say it this way: both of them were intriguing. Both of them were intriguing, if you will, to say the least. Because, like I said, both touched upon basically the same stuff. Both of them touched upon the same stuff. There is no doubt about it. They had some of the same footage of when he was doing his speaking tour, when he was doing his when he was going out trying to be a motivational speaker. They had, they both have footage of that, if you will. Darkseid had just a little bit of footage of that. A&E had everything, the footage and the aftermath and all that. So if I was to compare the two, if I was to compare the two, if you will, if I was to compare the two, I would say that, even though Dark Side of the Ring, touched upon things a little bit more with the people they talked to, um, A&E kind of, I think, barely eked out a win. If you wanted to like compare the two, they barely eked out a win, because not only did they get in to a lot more stuff and show a lot more stuff, because I guess they had access to it more so, but they didn't shy away like anybody would expect. They did not shy away. I mean, sure, there was some things probably that they did shy away from, but not entirely. They did not shy away. And the way they were able to fill out this near 2 hour, or at least hour and a half time frame, was they used a lot of archival interviews from 2005, 2014, you name it, where they had Vince on there. They had they had an interview that Vince did for this actual special, along with they talked to Shane as well. But they had archival footage of Vince from 2014 talking about Warrior, 2005. The same with Sting. The same with Hulk Hogan. You know, they had yeah, they had a good amount of people uh, to talk to kind of you know make sure they got the facts straight, if you will. And what's interesting is his daughters, and you talk about growing up. You talk about whew, no offense, but whew, talk about growing up into beautiful young ladies that are going to carry on his legacy. I think his oldest basically said it best at the beginning. You can't fully tell the story even 7 years after his passing without just going all in. I mean, she basically said you can't basically she said in her own way that you can't censor things. You gotta let the truth out. You gotta touch upon all the things that people have heard about, so that they can probably get a straight answer, or they can know more about it. you know she basically said it best. She said you got to go all out with this. You can't leave anything out. So I'll give credit to Warrior's oldest for saying that, because she's right. If you're going to do something like this, do not hold anything out. Do not leave anything out. Because the thing is, you know, my assumption is A&E, for some of these biography collabs they're doing with WWE, they agreed either they would make these happen, but on the condition when they talk, but on the condition, I should say, that when they would talk about certain stars, that they would not hold anything back. They would get as much out there that is needed, whether people already knew about it or they didn't. So, for a sec. Okay, got it. Just making sure I log this in there, link it to the right people and all that. But anyway, like I said, you know, his daughter's right. They did. If you're going to talk about someone like Warrior, you can't leave anything out, and they didn't. I will give them a lot of credit on that. They did not leave anything out. That being A&E Biography. Now, as I mentioned moments ago, Alex, when he was watching Dark Side of the Ring, he tweeted that he was getting some. I think what he said. Let me see what he said again. Let me check that. I think he said he was getting self destruction of Ultimate Warrior like vibes from it, because, um, but they were reserved. In other words, they were reserved, is what they were. Let's see if I can get on this thing here. Okay, this is what Alex said, and if I can get it here. I think he has it somewhere. See, okay, this is what he said about 6 hours ago, about 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. That would be 11 his, I think. He said basically about 6 hours ago. It's about 4:04 p.m. Pacific right now. That would be 6:04 his time. This is what he said, and I quote: "I'm already getting the self-destruction of Ultimate War." Okay, this is what just Alex said, and I quote: "I'm already getting the self-destruction of Ultimate Warrior vibes from this episode. That said, it doesn't feel as forced. It feels genuine, deserved. It feels genuinely deserved." In other words, he's basically saying that even though with the Dark Side of the Ring episode, if you will, on the Warrior, being the way it is, kind of giving you those self-destruction of Ultimate Warrior vibes, that you know it doesn't feel forced like the WWE production of that DVD. And he's right. He's right, because basically the one thing about Dark Side of the Ring is you're able to shoot. You're not told to say, "Oh, say this or say that." Just shoot, but make it. Just shoot on something that you found bad, and we'll put it into the DVD. No, it was mainly the fact that with Dark Side of the Ring, they just let them shoot. They just say, "Go ahead and do it. Say what's in your mind, whatever." Stuff like that. Make it genuine. And that's what he's saying here. He's saying that basically he's getting self destruction of Ultimate Warrior vibes from this episode. But that said, it doesn't feel as forced. It feels genuine, deserved. So, let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. One person replied that the A&E docs all have Vince's stamp of approval. So it's like, they can't really do it. So, anyway, yeah, apparently, according to what Alex tweeted here, because he's been tweeting when he's watching it. Um, let's see. This is what he said about 5 hours ago. I think after while he was watching it, he noted that Warrior, because one thing they did not touch upon in the A&E biography, and this is one thing I got to give credit. Um, I got to give credit to Dark Side of the Ring for, is that they don't shy away from certain things that WWE does. And that's one thing they did do there that Darkseid didn't. Basically, when they talked to Sherry, Warrior's first wife, um, Sherry knew that if he was going to be on the road a lot, something was going to probably happen. She had this vibe, she had this feeling, you know, and she she had, and basically what fueled her suspicion is that she didn't hear from him from a while. So she would have a wellness inspector go to check up on him, and the wellness inspector would call her back and say, "Yeah, he's in there, he's asleep." So, she still had this uneasiness that something was up, something was not right. And so she calls again. This time she's able to get in contact with him, and she finds out, as she's talking to him, she hears another woman in the background. She hears another woman in the background. And when she's calling him, he's just getting out of bed. He's just waking up from bed because the phone call woke him up. And as she's talking to him, she hears a woman in the background. You know, so yeah, basically she was to say that Sherry uh was was upset, Shari was upset, would be an understatement, because she broke down. That's the one thing both wives did here, is that when it came to certain moments, they broke down. Even Vince, when he talked about Warrior dying days after he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in his last appearance on Raw, he kind of started to break down a little bit. It's one of those situations to where you talk about the person, you criticize, but also celebrate. But then you get to that one moment nobody wants to hear about, and yeah, it's hard to imagine, if you will. It's hard to imagine. Now, just Alex, this is what he wrote about it, and I quote, or he tweeted about it, and I quote. He says, "Warrior cheated on his first wife? Is that why Dana called the documentary smut and filth? You don't think Jim cheated on Sherry with Dana, do you? That reaction from Dana was pretty shady." So what Alex, and I'm sure others along with him, are saying here, or pointing out here, is they feel it's kind of suspicious that Dana would criticize something like Dark Side of the Rings, take on her husband and everything, calling it smut and filth, when she probably hadn't really seen it that much. And And anybody, I guess, would feel that that's a little suspicious. Like, why would you criticize something that you may have not even seen, and you only heard maybe by word of mouth? It's like, are you trying to hide something? Were you the woman he slept with? And those are good questions to want to be answered or to have answered. We may never get them, but who's to say we won't down the line? But anyway, basically, basically basically that wasn't the case though. That really wasn't the case though, because um, he met Dana. Warrior met Dana at his gym, the gym he had opened up, his Warriors gym. He had met Dana there, and Sherry met her new husband there, her new love there as well. And you know, just to say that Dana could have been one of the girls he cheated on Shari with, um, I can't believe that, because Sherry even said that when she looked through his belongings, after discovering what she did when she called him, she noticed a daily planner with each day of the month, if you will, um, basically with a different girl's name on it. It had a different girl's name on it every for every day, like when he would be on the road. And again, this is one thing that Sherry, in the Dark Side of the Ring one, said that she was afraid. She had a suspicion was going to happen. She basically said she had a feeling this was going to happen, and it did. It did. Now, now here's the thing. They did both touch upon his origins of being small and everything, wanted to build himself up, be a bodybuilder and everything, because he saw the he saw Arnold Schwarzenegger being that way, and of course because of Arnold's role in pumping iron. So he wanted to do that, and he would have the Arnold poster right in front of him whenever he would lift some weight so he can get in shape. But of course, as both stated, both documentaries stated, that didn't work out for him. So he pursued a career in wrestling. Him and Sting, both became the Freedom Fighters originally in CWA. And when that didn't work, they flipped the switch. Excuse me, they flipped the switch, if you will, and decided to go heel. They decided to go heel and become the Blade Runners. And, that worked fine for a bit. I think they became tag champs when they were the Blade Runners. I think that was in the UWF, Bill Watts UWF. But of course, both did touch upon the moment, towards the end of the tenure in UWF, where Warrior started to wanted to do his own thing. He wanted to have his own independence, kind of do his own thing in the wrestling business. So Watts basically said, "Hey, look, I got your money here. You need to come up and get it." And Warrior didn't go with Sting to do it. So Sting had to finish out whatever dates they had left on the contract by himself. So he had to do that, and that was kind of hard, if you will. Oh, not hard, but that was kind of like disappointing for him, if you will. But yeah, Sting had to. But yeah, like I said, Sting had to basically finish out their dates because Warrior decided to go off on his own and do his own thing. And that's when he showed up in World Class at World Class Championship Wrestling, WCCW, and the Dingo Warrior was born. And the Dingo name, according to the A&E Biography, was because somebody was drunk in the back, had a new puppy, and they had the puppy around or something like that. I don't know if the person that had the dog with them was drunk, but all I know is that they said that basically um, that basically the guy one of the guys back there was drunk, and when they were asked what kind of dog, that what dog that they had there, the little puppy, they said, "Oh, it's a dingo," and that's how Dingo Warrior was born. And they just went from there. And both basically had similar footage as to his time in WCCW, where he was managed by Gary Hart. He became a babyface. Things like that. So they had similar footage. They had similar, if not identical, footage. Um, the thing is, though, when they talked about his transition to WWF, the one thing that A&E said, and I think Darkseid kind of touched upon it a little bit too, but A&E's biography said was, Vince saw that and he was going to make it his own. He was going to decide to make it his own, and he did. He did make it his own, if you will. He did make it his own. Um, but what's interesting when you compare the two, both had basically the similar, I guess you could say, official debut of Warrior. But when A&E showed it, they basically had the Ultimate Warrior introduction overlapping it. Well, on the A&E side, well, not A&E, but on the dark side of the Ring documentary, they had the original introducing the Dingo Warrior. They had the original debut of him in WWE as the Dingo Warrior, WWF as the Dingo Warrior. So, yeah, like I said, they talked about similar moments and everything. His first wife, Shari, basically said that the moment, I think she said the moment he won either the world title or the Intercontinental title, one of them, that that moment when he won one of those championships, when he won it, basically Jim Hellwig left, Warrior entered. In other words, in her own words, the Warrior persona started to take over his life. He started to kind of mix the two together into a hybrid of one person. So yeah, it was. So yeah, they like I said, they touched upon it a lot more and everything. They touched upon the divorce papers and everything. Um, and what it was is that so what it was. So the timing, I guess you could say, they did touch upon basically the timing being similar as to when he lost the title to Sergeant Slaughter and everything. They talked about that. They talked about that and how they were hitting a reset, if you will. But what they didn't talk about, that A&E did, along with the divorce, was this was all happening at the same time he was dropping the title to Slaughter. Darkseid basically had Cherie said she was going to divorce him, and she did. She was going to send him divorce papers or have him have divorce papers ready for him when he would come home. But they didn't. But the thing is, they didn't touch upon, as far as I know, the fact that this was happening at the same time he was scheduled to drop the belt to Sergeant Slaughter at the Royal Rumble in 1991. And A&E, they touched upon it. They did. So anyway, they covered basically similar grounds, if you will. But you can kind of tell that the difference, the difference between both documentaries, if you will, or documentaries. You can kind of tell the big difference was who they were talking to. Because on the A&E side, they had his mom, they had his widow, Dana Warrior, they had his daughters, they had, um, I think they had his football coach, they had his friend from high school, they had um, someone that he trained under for bodybuilding. They had, of course, Peter Rosenberg, Sam Roberts, who some people are like, well, why do you have them here? But again, look, they're guys that grew up in our generation, obviously getting into sports and everything. You got to give them credit, whether you like them or not. They have an intuition when it comes to wanting to know some things or find out more information. The historian, they're kind of like historians, but not in that Jim Cornette like level, if you know what I mean. But yeah, they had them. They had Vince. They had Shane. They had archival interviews of Sting and Hogan. You know, they had everything covered and they had all the bases covered, if you will, when it came to getting different takes on the story, or different sides of the story. Dark Side of the Ring, they had, of course, his first wife. They had um, Jim Cornette. They had Eric Bischoff. They had Jim Ross, and I think they had somebody else. I can't really think of who that was. But yeah, that was probably the big difference right there. And you can kind of tell that, between, both, broadcast, if you will, um, the tone in the interviews that were being done. You can kind of tell that in a way, Cornette and Ross, weren't particularly fans of Warrior. They weren't big particular fans of the guy. Obviously they respected him in a way, and what he was and what he had become, like besides besides a true catch cans wrestler, if you will. But they kind of, I guess you can kind of tell they respected, you know, the attention he brought to the business, or how he's trying to help it, or trying to, I wouldn't say help it, but try to, evolve it, if you will. You can kind of tell and sense they have a bit of respect, not much, but yeah, there is definitely some dark side of the. There is definitely some. I will agree with Alex Six on this. There are definitely a lot of not a lot, not big, but there are definitely some self destruction of Ultimate Warrior vibes to it, because they did touch upon the good stuff. They did do that. Dark Side of the Ring did do that, but the reenactments kind of it helped enhance a little bit of the storytelling, and maybe they didn't thoroughly tell the story, depending on. I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing about these two episodes on Warrior. It all depends basically on who you believe. A lot of people look at the fact that the A&E biographies, you know, they don't hold anything back, but there are certain people that they will pick on, or not pick on, but choose from to talk to. And the reason they would choose them is because they know they will say things they want to hear. What's surprising and what really got a lot of people when you compare the two is Dark Side of the Ring. You think, oh, these guys would have Meltzer or Russo on them, right? Nope. A&E had Russo and Meltzer. A&E had them. And what's funny is Meltzer could take this to the bank. He could take this to the bank. That in the span of 1 month, in the span of just a month, he was on both Dark Side of the Ring and A&E Biography. Not many people could say that they did that in 1 year, or in not 1 year, but in one season, more or less in the span of less than a month. Because he was interviewed on Dark Side of the Ring for Brian Pillman. Now he's on the A&E Biography for Warrior. Go figure. Go figure. But yeah, not many people could say they did that, and he can. He can be one of them now. But yeah, they had Russo and Meltzer, and on the other hand, Dark Side of the Ring had Eric Bischoff. And you think Bischoff would be on the A&E one, but he wasn't. And he was on the, like I said, he was on the Dark Side of the Ring one. Not much, but he was there. Um, but yeah, both, like I said, both touched on similar situations. Both had both documentaries, if you will, showed similar footage. The one thing about Dark Side of the Ring is when they show WWE footage, unless they can get permission, maybe just for that one last moment, like a recent moment or something like that, Most of the other time, like the footage of him in the ring competing, they would always frame it like a TV tube, or like a television tube, if you will. So I guess they wouldn't get in trouble or something. But you can't tell me that Dark Side of the Ring doesn't, give WWE something in return to using these. You can't tell me they don't pay them something under the table. You can't tell me they don't, because I'm sure they do. I'm sure WWE has some deal under the table with the people advice and Dark Side of the Ring saying, "Hey, you can use our footage, but you got to give us a little bit of that moolah in return. Maybe not a big chunk, if you will, but just enough to keep them off their back." Um, but yeah, it was. But yeah, like I said, both covered basically similar topics and everything, if you will. Dark Side of the Ring, of course, had that darker tone to it. What they talked about and everything, because again, there are some things they do not. But what I'm trying to say is, there are some things they will not shy away from. They won't. They will not shy away from anything. And one of the things they didn't shy away from, like I said earlier, is the fact that he cheated on his wife, his first wife, and everything. But what they did do, and they talked about Cherie in the A&E biography a couple of times, you know, and that's about it. A couple of times, like when he first met her, when he first met her, and then married her, and then the divorce, and I think that's about it. Cherie basically, um, not only did they get her to talk to, but the fact is, she, like I said, she didn't hold anything back. She didn't. She even talked about the fact that, after they divorced, you know, months afterwards, Warrior would still communicate with her, and he even invited her to Scottsdale, Arizona, to his new mansion. They did touch upon that he bought that, I think, in the A&E biography. But in Dark Side, they touched upon that, and Sherry was the one that he had talked to and confided in about the letter he was getting ready to give Vince. And like I said earlier, they talked about that letter. They showed the letter, on screen, not physically held by somebody, but on screen. And they only, talked about certain, they only narrated and highlighted certain moments in there, and certain moments in the letter. But here, Cherie basically says that Warrior asked her over to confide in her and show her what he was going to do, because his letter basically was saying that he wanted the same, royalties as the same, basically the same treatment that Hogan was getting. That basically he had put so much work in, and both did touch upon it when they talked about it, but that he had put so much work in, and financially as well, that he believed he deserved the same, the same treatment. And Cherie basically said, this is not going to end well for him. And it didn't, because as both stated, right after he ran through the curtain towards the end of SummerSlam, towards the end of the match there, Vince, fired him. Now, biography says that when he ran to the back, somebody grabbed him. I don't know who it was, saying, "Hey, Vince wants to see you." And Vince basically, I guess, talked to him, gave him his letter and everything, and then fired him or suspended him in a sense. They both say both said they fired him. Vince even said he fired him, said he couldn't wait to do it. But the A&E biography one said he was suspended for 90 days, and then I guess was fired and then rehired or something. I don't know. And the Dark Side of the Ring one says he was fired. Maybe I think maybe they mentioned a suspension, but mostly they said fired. So when you compare the two, both basically said the same thing, but the A&E biography, kind of said that he was suspended, and then I would guess it was also firing or something like that. But yeah, the Dark Side of the Ring one, not only did they talk about it, they reenacted it in a way that was a little bit more slightly different, because in their reenactment, when Warrior's running to the back, Vince is right there to stop him, to hand him the letter, and then basically say, "You're fired." get the fire. You're fired. Get the f out of my building. And this is coming, from Jake the Snake, who they're doing a Dark Side of the Ring on next week. Him and Sam Houston and Rock and Robin, the Smith family, the Grizzly Smith family. But he basically was right there because Jake Jake was told by Vince, because he was on the verge of doing a heel turn, right? And Jake was told he was going to work with Warrior because Warrior needed some new opponents. So he was going to initially work with Warrior. He knew that they were going to make some big money based on how they're both presented and who they are. And this is all stemming off all those vignettes that they did with Warrior trying to believing he could trust Jake and everything, and finding out that it's a lie and that Jake was in cahoots with the Undertaker. But anyway, like I said, Jake needed, and not Jake, but Warrior needed new opponents, and Jake was like at the top of the list as being his next opponent. But when this happened, according to what Jake said, when Vince did this, Vince then turned to Jake and said, "You got the worst luck of anybody I know, or of anybody I've met." Basically stating that, I guess obviously there have been several times beforehand where it looks like they're going to put Jake with someone like, let's say, Hogan. Historically they were going to do Hogan and him, but they were afraid people would turn on Hogan and everything because they liked Jake, because there was a pop when Jake hit him with a DDT, I think in the Snake Pit, which was something that never aired. I think you can find it on YouTube somewhere. But that didn't materialize, even though they worked some matches at house shows. And I think there might have been some other situations as well. So yeah, again, it's like Jake couldn't catch a break here. It's like he thought now he had a big opportunity again. And I guess from what he's stating, it sounded like Warrior was supposed to get the belt back again. Who knows? But that didn't happen. Warrior got fired. In his mind, he got fired. And, there was, nothing he could do about it. And Jake was pissed. He basically said, I wanted to freaking, to that guy. He basically wanted to hurt. Let's just say he wanted to make sure his existence was short-lived. We'll put it that way. But yeah, he was not happy. He was not happy. Now, again, like I said, both touched. Now, once again, I should say, both did touch upon his return in '92. And then how, like I said, he was let go because why was he? I guess because of the fact that when he came back, he didn't look the same. He had to build himself back up. And the A&E biography brought up the fact that he started getting these growth hormone things to help him out. And I think Darkseid kind of touched upon that too a little bit, but not much. Hold on for a sec. Hello? Okay, I'm leaving now. All right. Okay. All right, what are you doing? What kind of mail did we get? Did you get it? Yeah, it's just City of Newman. Yeah. Oh, not the down because recycle came already? Yeah, it came early. All right. I'll do that when I'm home. All right. Okay. Not today. I may do it tomorrow. Or may do it Sunday. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah. I got to go to the thing with Jericho tomorrow. Yeah. Oh. Okay, Brian. I'm on my way home. All right. Okay. I'll call you at the gas station. Okay. Okay. God bless you. Okay, bye. Bye. Sorry about that little phone call from my mom letting me know she's on her way home. She's just leaving now. It's about 4:35. Takes about 54 minutes, traffic depending. It should be Hopefully not that bad, but then again, it's the start of Memorial Day weekend. What do you expect? It might be. Who knows? But anyway, like what was I saying? Oh yeah, they both touched upon basically the fact that he had gotten these growth hormone things or whatever to help build him back up, and this was all. And like I said, Dark Side of the Ring slightly touched upon it, but not much. Biography touched upon it, more, if you will, and they both kind of said that it happened around the time that the steroid trial was happening, and that's why later on that year, Warrior was let go, even though he was planned to work that tag match of Survivor Series. He was let go because not only did they find, because he has to fill, because one thing Biography talked about and showed is he has to fill out these forms whenever they do a drug test of like, okay, this is what you're taking, this is what you're taking, da 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 da. And and basically one of the drug tests that he did showed that he was taking the stuff that they were being they were basically being investigated for. Vince was being put on trial for that kind of stuff, and if not more, so they had to let him go. They had to let him go. They had to part ways with him, and they didn't bring him back till '96. And basically, according to Biography, and like I said, Dark Side of the Ring kind of touched upon this too. Was Warrior was trying to, by this time, Warrior had legally changed his name to Warrior because this was, his character. He had come up with this character initially, even before WWE. So he was able to use it. They couldn't. The only thing that they could use from it was Ultimate. Anytime he would be with them, he'd be Ultimate Warrior. But outside of it, he'd just be Warrior, and that's it. So he had legal use of it, and he wanted to make it go mainstream. So he did his Warrior University, and then he did his comic. But he knew that, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to have a huge platform. And he ended up going back to WWF, and that didn't last long because he missed a few house shows, if you will. A&E, brought up the fact that and Vince even talked about this in one of the archival interviews. Uh, they talked about the fact that Warrior was missing some house shows, and you're not supposed to do that, especially with a company like WWE. And that one of the excuses Warrior made was his father had passed. But Warrior had not seen his father since he was a kid because both did talk about it. His father walked out on them, walked out on the mom and everything, and that was it. So it was like, really, you're going to use that for an excuse because you couldn't make dates. And basically, that was it. That was it for his career in WWE until he got inducted in 2014 into the Hall of Fame. So, yeah, they touched upon all that. They even touched upon, like I said earlier, his motivational speaking tour that he was doing. They had footage, both had footage of his moment at the University of Connecticut. But A&E Biography, they went more into it. They went more into it because that's where he was talking about, gay people and all that, and queering and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, Dark Side touched upon it. They talked about it, but they didn't show any more than what they did. A&E went all out. They got footage basically from this, and they had basically people. They had students in there arguing with him. They even showed one student telling him after he brought this all up, "You need to apologize. You apologize for what you said. No, you apologize." Because they didn't like hearing it. They didn't like hearing that somebody, had a belief that, what, LGBTQ is to them is wrong. That's not the way things work, you know. And both Dark Side of the Ring and A&E Biography, you know, both, both documentaries, um, both basically said it best, especially those that they interviewed. Warrior was a very opinionated person, and he would let you know about it. And that's the one thing that made him kind of a controversial figure in and out of the ring. And even behind the scenes when he would be working for WWE, he was a very opinionated person. He would give you his opinion on something whether you liked it or not. So, they did all that. One thing Biography did that Darkseid didn't, because I think Darkseid couldn't get access anyway, was they showed behind the scenes footage of a lot of the takes that they would have to do when it comes to doing promos and everything. And they even talked about a promo, an apology promo that Warrior had to do to a kid that he snapped at an airport. And this was at a time after he lost the title and everything. I think it was even before um no, what it was, yeah, it was, I think was it around the time he lost the title and was going towards SummerSlam, or something, or was it after no, I think it was when he came back in 92. It was after he came back in 92. Warrior snapped at a kid. He snapped at a kid, and he had to basically go on in character on camera because the family of the kid was connected to WWE, and he had to apologize to him. He had to apologize to him, and he had to do several takes to do it. And even in the video that they were showing of these takes, he would argue, he was getting frustrated, he was getting angry with Vince, because he's like, look, what am I doing? I'm doing what you're telling me, but you know, it's like he wanted to know, exactly why he was doing this apology and everything. So I think he knew, but still, it's like, really, I need to do this. So yeah, it was just one of those situations to where he was like, you got to see the behind the scenes frustration that he and Vince and all of them would have with each other. Um, so yeah, it was one of those situations, and they even had Mark Calloway, the Undertaker, as part of this as well, talking about it, and and again, they had, like I said, they used similar footage, if you will, in their own unique ways. Of course, A&E collabing with WWE, straight up access. Darkseid doing their thing on how they would show footage. They have footage of him as a guest on Primetime Wrestling. It's the same footage and everything. So, yeah, but basically both overall gave their own takes on the Warrior and everything, and it was. I'll say this is very intriguing to say the least. Very intriguing because again, you had one side that you know mostly would talk about the negative, try with some talking about the positive. Well, on the other hand, you had somewhat of a balancing out, if you will. You had a balancing out, if you will, between there. So it was one of those kind of situations that, you know, again, as I mentioned earlier, who do you really believe? Who's telling the full on truth, and who's telling, who's telling you know, basically it's like who's telling the full on truth. It's like who's telling the full on truth and who's telling the truth but hiding a few things they don't want you to know. You know, that's the one thing you have to know. It's like who's being honest, who's like being truly legit, if you will. It's like who's truly being legit. And again, both did interesting takes. There's no doubt about it. Did very interesting takes. Um, Dark Side, they didn't touch. They touched upon his football career, his football play. They touched upon him doing football briefly, but mostly it was about the wrestling, mostly about the bodybuilding and the transition into wrestling, and then the transition into motivational speaking and stuff like that. So, Darkseid did that, and Darkseid also, showed some of those videos he did when he had his head completely shaved, and he would call out guys like Hogan and Savage or some of them and call them, all kinds of names, all kind of colorful verbiage, if you will. And they kind of had something similar with him from 2005. I think it might have been an RF video shoot he was doing or some kind of shoot from his house. So, yeah, they had something similar there, but they had access here on Dark Side of the Ring to the ones that he did like on YouTube and everything before his passing. Before he did his reconciliation too. Um, but yeah, again, they covered a lot between both. But when you combine both of them together, they covered everything. They covered just about everything you've known about and some things you didn't know about. And that's that's what's kind of cool about it. And that's what's kind of cool about it, because you can basically, if you don't, like with one, if you don't get, if you don't get the full index of everything, out of one, you can always look at the other one, to get what was left out. So you have a choice. So you have a choice, like, you could, well, not a choice, but you have basically a two-part situation here. You have part one, or chapter one, the biography A&E, or the A&E biography, and then part two, you have Dark Side of the Ring. There you go. Um, but yeah, both were very interesting takes. Both did end on good notes and everything, talking about his reconciliation with WWE, with Vince, his reconciliation with Jake, and everything. Because Jake still had an issue with him. Jake basically wanted to get even with him, but much to his surprise, Warrior's the one that approached him and said, "Hey man, let's bury the hatchet." Basically, let's bury the hatchet. And that was in the past. Let's let bygones be bygones. I apologize and things. I apologize and stuff. And Jake, Jake was surprised by that. He was caught off guard to the point that he's like, you know what? I accept it. I accept your apology. And they did show behind this, and I think they did show behind the scenes footage of him at the of him embracing Jake as well at the Hall of Fame. And I think A&E had the same stuff. Um, and they also had him, reconciling with Hulk as well, which was pretty cool. And yeah, again, both ended on a good note with him going into the Hall of Fame. Aim, in my opinion, talking about the positive. Sherry actually talked about how she found out, but then, of course, they had to get into his passing, which happened a couple of days later. After his last appearance on Raw, his final appearance on Raw, and Sherry gave her recollection of how she found out when she, I think, got a phone call from a friend saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry about Jim," and she's like, "What are you talking about?" And that's when she found out about his passing. In I think it was in Scottsdale or in Phoenix, Arizona, when they were coming out of the hotel. Now, one thing I will criticize Dark Side of the Ring on about, and I know they have to do this to kind of give people an idea of how it may have happened by doing the reenactment, but I think in this case you didn't have to have a reenactment of him collapsing um, outside of the hotel on the way to the hospital. I don't think you need to do that. I think it would have been best if you would have left that out, and it would have been just fine and everything. It would have been just fine. Um, Dana, of course, when she talked about it, thought, okay, he's just tired. I'll get you something. You just rest. Because it's been an exhausting weekend. The Hall of Fame, WrestleMania, Raw. And they're getting ready to go do spring break. But she's like, look, I'll just do it. You just rest. I'll get you whatever you need. And basically, Warrior's like, no, no, I need to get to the hospital. Something's not. It's basically Warrior knew something wasn't right. And Dana, as soon as she kind of like started to see I guess started to register what was going on, she was like, oh no. It's like she knew too. It's like suddenly she started to kind of get the idea of, oh, like this is not good if he's saying he needs to go to the hospital. And basically she said that, and she was breaking down when she talked about this, that they're not even barely out of the hotel when he just collapsed and she could not grab him. It was like watching a big old big old tree trunk fall and everything to the ground, and she couldn't catch him and everything. And she again, she started breaking down and crying and saying that they left the kids there for them to rest and everything, because they didn't, as well as because they didn't want them at the hospital. But by doing so, she robbed her daughters of the last time they would see their dad ever again, until I guess the funeral. Uh, but yeah, that's how basically both ended. in a sense. Both kind of came to a close. They again they start. It was a bittersweet ending on both ends. Both talked about it, like I said. Both talked about his reconciliation with the company and those involved and those that he may have caused issues with. But then, of course, they had to talk about his passing. The overall thing, though, is they said that his legacy is one that's always going to be remembered. That he is a once in a lifetime individual, and that basically he lived up to what he said he was going to do. He was going to make himself into somebody that people would be talking about forever. He'd basically be somebody that was going to live on forever. Basically he was going to make a legacy for himself that people would talk about, um, forever in a day, and that's what he did. That's what he did, and again, together, both shows, both documentaries, did a great job. They filled basically every single gap you could think of. Like I said, if A&E didn't talk about something but touch upon it, Dark Side was there to fill it in. If Dark Side didn't fully touch upon something, A&E was there to fill it in. So it was kind of a good balancing out, if you will, between both shows, if you will. And now, what's interesting though is a lot of people criticized A&E's biography for not talking about his brief run in WCW back in '98. Dark Side of the Ring didn't do it either. They didn't. We know it happened. We as fans know it happened. WWE knows it happened. Those in charge of Dark Side of the Ring knows it happened, but neither one of them touched upon it. They touched upon his bodybuilding career, transition to wrestling, transition to motivational speaker, his controversialness, if you will, and then his reconciliation, and that was it. Never once, never once did they talk about his run in WCW. Not once. They talked about everything else, if you will, but they never talked about his run in WCW, and that was crazy. Because and here's the thing: last night I'm watching Dark Side of the Ring while I'm eating dinner, and I'm thinking that if anybody's going to talk about, the Warrior in WCW, if A&E Biography's not, it's got to be Dark Side of the Ring. But they didn't. They didn't talk about it. They just talked about the last time he was in WWF as a competitor in '96 before he was let go again, and that was it. They acted like the run in WCW never happened. But we as fans know it did. We as fans know it did. And I'm just like, really? You're going to leave that out? I mean, you talk about an interesting part. I mean, here's the thing. I have the Warrior Warrior DVD that they brought out when he reconciled with them. I have that Warrior DVD there, and they talk about it on there. They talk about it on there, but they didn't talk about it here. They talked about everything else, but not that. So I guess they felt it wasn't that important. But again, overall, it was just good. I'll give them credit. Both overall did a fantastic job. Yes, I'll agree with Alex Six, just Alex, if you will, that you did get some self-destruction of Ultimate Warrior vibes from Dark Side of the Ring at times, but I thought they did a good job. A&E Biography, they have a reputation of doing a good job on whoever they talk about. I thought they did decently here with Warrior, and I can't say any more than that. I really can't. I mean, both I think talked about biography. A&E Biography talked about it more so than Dark Side, I think, but both talked about how Warrior was put into a program with Andre, and that basically was what kind of was the catalyst to his kind of like his rivalry, on screen and off screen, if you will, behind the scenes with Hulk. Like, hey, whatever you can. Basically they summed it up in a way that it was a one-upsmanship deal between them. Like, whatever you can do, I can do better, or I can do just as well. Like, everybody knows Hogan slammed Andre at WrestleMania 3. Warrior slammed him. Hey, if you could do it, I'll do it. And there you go. And that pretty much is what built them towards their match at WrestleMania 6 from an on screen and behind the scenes perspective. But again, that's where a lot of what happened with Warrior afterwards kind of like changed completely. Like, you know, it basically he achieved the highest of highs, but then all of a sudden it was like the lowest of lows started to come crashing down. I mean, Warrior said it himself in the A&E biography. It's like he was wondering, okay, what's next? What's next? What do I do next? And again, like I said, both talked about similar, issues and moments and controversies. And and obviously you could tell that when one wouldn't talk about one thing or slightly touch upon it, the other would be there to fill in that gap. And that's what I got. And that's the vibe I got out of watching both. When A&E would slightly touch upon something, you can go right to Dark Side of the Ring and say, yeah, they talked about it. They didn't hide from it. And again, this is to me both are good companion pieces to each other. You can watch the A&E biography and enjoy how good it is, but and then notice that it sounds like and then notice that it seems like they're leaving out some things here. They're not totally giving us the full details. You know, and so after you watch that, you can go over the Dark Side of the Ring and say, okay, let's see what they have to say, and then you'll probably notice the similar issues and everything being talked about, but you'll also notice that there is more expansion on things that was slightly touched upon in the A&E biography. But overall, I I can't say any more than, job well done on both ends. Job well done. And I will say this: if you have not watched these yet, if you've not watched these yet, you go on demand. If you have Xfinity or Cox or AT&T or whoever, check out A&E. Go to the biography. Click on Warrior. You'll enjoy it. They go and they do a decent job, in my opinion. They got a lot of good talking heads, as Brian Alvarez call them, discussing what's going on with Warrior and stuff. And then go to Vice on Demand. Look up Dark Side of the Ring. Check that out. Check out the take on that, and you'll see that even though they talk about the same kind of stuff, they go into more deep. They actually also talk about things or touch upon things that are slightly touched on in the A&E one, but they expand on it more in the Dark Side one. So overall, again, I really enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for next week's, which is going to be on the Smith family, on Grizzly Smith and his family. And all I can say, just by the sneak peek, um, man, you know, Sam Houston. I mean, we saw some. Here's the thing: Sam Houston. We saw interviews with him before. The guy aged. He aged well, but you could definitely tell. But you could definitely tell he looks completely different. And age will do that to you, but basically you can tell he's like a different person. It's like if you were to take a look at Sam Houston in his WWF days, in his world class days, if you will, as well as his NWA days, you would basically be like, whoa, what happened? Is this the same guy? You get that vibe when you see him. And then, of course, they're going to talk to Jake, but they also talk to Rockin' Robin. Yeah, they got Rockin' Robin. And, she looks, well, except for the short hairstyle and the grayness or the silver in her hair, she pretty much looks the same. She's older in the face, you could tell, but she's pretty much the same. So her and out of the three kids, her and Jake, no offense, Sam Houston, they aged they aged they aged very well. I'll put it that way. Yeah, Jake didn't look like that in the past, but now when you look at him, it's like, whoa, what a transformation back to almost 20 years ago. Like what a fountain of youth transformation. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, they got that upcoming next, and then after that, I think they're taking a break as they prepped and get ready for the second half, which I think will be later on in the summer, and then that's when we'll get like XPW, FMW, Canyon, Luna Vachon, and all of them. So yeah, but overall, I truly enjoyed this special, and not the special, but I truly enjoyed both documentaries on Warrior, A&E, and Dark Side. Like I said, they're both good companion pieces to each other because when one doesn't touch upon everything or kind of slightly touches upon it, you can always rely on the other to fill in the gaps. But let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. What did you think about the Ultimate Warrior the Ultimate Warrior uh, documentaries, I should say, the Ultimate Warrior documentaries on A&E and Dark Side of the Ring? Do you feel they both are good companion pieces to each other? You know, who do you think did a better job in filling in the gaps? Do you think one was there to fill in the gaps when the other didn't? And do you think maybe what, let's say Alex Six said in his Twitter might be true, that maybe Dana might be hiding something? She might be shady in what she was saying about, oh, the Dark Side of the Ring one was smut and filth. What are your thoughts? Comment down below. Let me know how you all feel about it. Thank you all for joining. Really appreciate your support here on my YouTube channel. I've gotten just about 11,010 subscribers as we speak. So let's get it going, guys. Let's build back up. Uh, Patreon is open. I don't even think Patreon.com at BW Roses is open if you want to donate there. I don't even know if I did any live chats. I don't even know if I did monetization on my live here, but if not, I do apologize if you guys wanted to do super chatting. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are down below. Comment if you like. I'd love to hear from each and every one of you on this. And yeah, that's it, guys. So take care. God bless. I am out. Check out Dark Side of the Ring as well as A&E Biography with the collab with WWE. I think you'll enjoy what you get. So till next time, guys. God bless. Take care. I am out.